Welcome to Creative Leaders Forum. I'm Virpi Haavisto. I'm a founder and leader of Avantage, a coaching company. We are specialized in coaching high-performing creative professionals, leaders, executives, and teams. And today we are going to talk about the very intriguing combination of creativity, leadership, teamwork, and trust. And we have 6 very talented and experienced professionals in our talk. We have Timo Tiainen from Kone, Jenny Reuter from Aalto University, Jeremiah Tesolin from Fiskars, Aleksi Malmberg from Helsinki Philharmonic Orchestra, Maija Itkonen from Golden Green Foods, and last but not least, Mari Männikkö from Helsinki Contemporary, the place, the gallery we are right now. Here in the middle, Mari, would you like to tell us a bit about the place and the exhibition we are seeing around us?
Actually, I never use a mic in this room because the acoustics is very good, but obviously I'm told to use it now. Yeah. Well, warmly welcome to Helsinki Contemporary. I wish many of you has been here before, but that many of you will return as well. We're a contemporary art gallery that puts on 11 shows a year. We represent around 30 Nordic artists, mainly Finnish, and one of them is Janne Räisänen, whose exhibition Xanadu, hän ottaa maailman avosylin vastaan, is here on display now and will be on display until the end of this month. Janne is obviously a painter from northern Finland, being living in Berlin for a long while already. He has brought small stories on canvas to the gallery, his everyday life observations from all around his daily paths, whether they go to Berlin, Helsinki, Tallinn, or Rovaniemi. Lapland is a very big influencer in his works. To keep it short, I recommend you to then later on look into the materials we've got about the show, and especially to look into the titles of the paintings, because those who know Finnish, I'm sure you will find a poet in Janne as well.
Thank you, Mari, and thank you for Helsinki Contemporary for having us. Thank you, Mari, Katja, and Inna. Are we ready for the talk? Yes. First, I think that we take a short presentation round and tell us who you are, what do you do, and in what kind of professional roles are you at the moment? Please, anybody can start?
Maybe I then be the first brave ones. So my name is Timo Tiainen. I'm the head of Kone Design, having a global role in that company, doing design for elevators, escalators, automated building doors, services, and basically everything that Kone does. So role is pretty international or global, you would say, and we are spread around different regions in the world. So we have people in Finland, obviously, in China, in India, and now setting up a team also in US. What I would say that is the most inspiring, sparking thing in my work life is that little moment when I see that the team really understands or kind of gets the hold of the solution of the things that they are solving. So that really is the big driver for me and for the people in there, because it's obviously creative work to solve issues and find new things.
Hello, my name is Jenny Reuter. I work as a professor at the Aalto University, and alongside with the academic work, I'm also working in my own small architecture office and an office together with Helena Sandman and Saija Holmén. And we have been working in low resource settings, mostly in Africa, for over 20 years now. So we have been having the challenge of working in very different cultures and with people with extremely different background. And I would actually think a bit the same when you're talking about the inspiring moments. I think when you work with people, it can be in the academic world as well. When you work with people that have very different background, they can be in the education or age or sex or whatever, gender, or and you have different knowledge, and you come to a stage where you can all bring something of your own to that process, and you have a trust in the air, and you can go forward, and you feel that as a team you don't have to struggle, that you are stronger in that creative moment. And often it's so that it really, you can feel it in the air, and that's quite great.
That sounds perfect, that feeling in the air. Let's go that a bit later.
Okay. Hey, I'm Jeremiah Tesselin. I'm Canadian. I've lived here for about 18 years now, which is quite some time. My Finnish is okay. Not good enough to be speaking Finnish right now. I've somehow stumbled on a career of helping Finnish companies succeed and go international. Done a lot of work in product design, but also in branding and retail and marketing, so I've somehow made my rounds around. I'm currently creative director in Fiskars, and Fiskars is the scissors and knives and axes, but it's also a group. So it's the equivalent of, let's say, LVMH or Kering, so it owns multiple brands. I work for Scandinavian Living, which is Iittala Arabia, a restaurant from Sweden in Royal Copenhagen. And I lead a very small internal design team that we try to design or manage the brands holistically internally, and then work with a lot of different freelancers and agencies. My inspiring moment, I was thinking about that today. I was going around the office doing all sorts of different things, and I get really happy when things happen. So I feel that, I don't know the metaphor, but I feel I'm an opener. I don't know if it's a bottle opener or wine bottle opener or door handle opener. I'm not sure what it is, but I feel that today I was opening up a lot of stuff, and there are people inside companies who can close things or neutralize things, but I feel that I'm an opener. So I think that in terms of creativity, opening is pretty nice.
Perfect metaphor.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Aleksi, working at the Helsinki Philharmonic Orchestra, which, by its origin, we're a 136 years old orchestra, having premiered the majority of Sibelius orchestral works. But what I feel is important that now we have 102 enthusiastic musicians looking towards the future. There's good things happening internationally with the orchestra and our chief conductor, Susanna Märkki. And I started there in January as the general manager or intendant, which is, intendants, they tend to be working in either the arts institutions or in zoos. And there's no conclusions to be made from this whatsoever. But it's having the overall strategic leadership as well as working with the artistic planning together with the orchestra and Susanna Märkki. And talking about those inspiring moments, we have a rather large and hectic working environment, like many of us, I believe. And one of those really inspiring things is when you actually get to stop for even 5 or 10 minutes go with the conductor or an artist and have a coffee and talk about sort of why are we doing this, where are we going. Or one of the best places to stop is a concert or a rehearsal, sort of even during the day when I sort of escape from the emails and go into the rehearsal hall and have a moment there that sort of gives a meaning to the job every day.
Okay, very interesting. Yes, my name is Maija Itkonen. I am one of the co-founders of the Go to Green Foods, which has the quite well-known product, Puldots des Nyftokaura. The company was founded 3 years ago. My background is I've studied industrial design and design management, so I'm kind of like a creative person, but at the same time I have quite a solid business background because I have a startup entrepreneur experience. So I founded this company with 2 food scientists, so I was basically taking care of everything else. So they took the science and I had everything else, meaning concept development, business development, and the sales and marketing and everything in between. So that was really educational for me to really kind of like see that I have a lot of possibility to actually build this to a certain direction. And of course, when you team up with people from totally different areas, you don't have to be twisting your arms like from every single little thing, that you can actually focus on the area where you believe that it's a good direction. So that's a super effective way forward. But now we are already 3 years after, we are 80 people, and it's of course a very, very different company already now, but we can still feel that this spirit is still there and this can-do attitude. But what really has been inspiring for me lately is that, all these 3 years I've been preaching about that we are a design-centric organization, and we want to be a design-centric organization. And what does that mean? What is design-centric? It really took some time that they're like, but we are just these scientists. Oh yeah, I'm super creative because of this and this and this, but I'm just, this and that. So they didn't really see the connection that what does it really mean? What is designing food and how would that differ? And actually I really saw it quite literally that so many people still think about that, oh, but design, it must be something like, designing a form of this and that. And then I keep talking about the design thinking and all of these values and like this way of thinking whatsoever. So I saw it just quite recently when they had a presentation to somebody else about it. Oh, we are a design-centric organization, and they were starting to tell about it. What does it really mean? And design is not just designing forms or something visual. It really is in our way of doing it. And what does mean designing food? Is a little bit different approach than just resemble the food from something that is like available, but really thinking about the whole life cycle and everything that is behind it. So kind of like that was super inspiring that I felt that it's really really I got this message through.
Congrats. Wow. Yes, everybody knows by now I'm working here at Helsinki Contemporary with the team of around 4 to 6 people being my team, and then we have the 30 artists that we work together very closely, so I include them to be part of the team actually as well. My background is in business. I have a business education, and I would describe myself being a person that to make it sound very rough in this context, I'm the person who is commercializing the content, whether it's news or literature or art. This is harsh in a way to put them aside like this, but in the end, I think in commercializing any content, you really need to feel passion for the content, and that's in the core of the work that we are doing, whether we have a background in business or art history or education or wherever. That's the core thing in our work, and then we bring together all the other aspects and all the other things that we know how to do to help the artist who is in the center of the team. And the very inspiring moments, there's plenty you can imagine, I guess. But I would say that what I get the most out of is actually something very pragmatic, something very practical, when the team comes together and we actually solve a problem where everyone needs to bring something from our own experience, as you told before, and without bringing that expertise together, the problem wouldn't be solved. And that inspires me a lot. And another thing is that once the show is not opened yet and we have the installation ready here, I tend to come first in the morning to have like a couple of minutes on my own in the exhibition. And boy, I really get the shivers every time I come here. It's amazing.
Thank you. Sounds so good, isn't it? Yes. As you heard, quite all of you said that what is the most inspiring moments. I asked it before. I didn't ask it just, but they had so good memory that they remembered it. Thank you. Those are very inspiring things to hear also, and very touching. If we go to the teamwork, what do you think? What are the most important elements of a good, successful teamwork? You can start in whichever order.
I can give one or two. First of all, I think that this kind of courage is super important for a creative person, and courage thought in a multiple ways, so that you have courage to trust to your colleague, you have courage to tell what you think, even though you are death scared that it's something that nobody else is thinking and everybody else is thinking something totally different. But when you open up these things and you tell this and you open it to your team, it's a kind of first step towards create solution. And in order to be able to have that, another thing that you need to have then is an empathy. You need to be able to take that feedback from a person who is super scared to tell it and take it in a way that you are respecting and supporting that thing to grow. So I would nominate these two.
I can also add something to that. I feel that even though, we totally need to respect the other's work, so that you're kind of like not manipulating what somebody has been doing, because you have to trust that they have the kind of like the professionalism to really like master their own piece. But at the same time, I mean, if we are like too kind of like, what's the word, herkkähipiäinen, what's that? Sensitive. So kind of like that, like to me that is actually one of the like some kind of like test that, you know, like how sensitively people take it if somebody is doing a little kind of like thing on the like, but how about this, you know, because that also means that, you know, you have to trust that it's not taking anything from your greatness if somebody is touching your work, you know, because actually when we keep adding and questioning, this is always towards the best solution. So we kind of like try to protect too much on individuals' artistry in a way.
Depends on the situation. The acoustics are actually pretty good here.
It's here.
Yeah, it's okay. So it depends on where the team is located, what type of company or organization or group. A lot of the work I've been doing lately is protecting creativity and making it special, because it normalizes so easily. Today we had I guess today was the design or data-driven design day. It's great, but it also normalizes. So a lot of my work is protecting and nurturing creativity, that there is an artistic sensibility, it's not an AI. At the same time, making sure that those people don't think that they're too special. Building on your point, and are able to kind of work with other people and kind of understand their needs. Otherwise, nothing happens. So no, I agree. Totally depends on the scale of what we're talking about.
Yeah, and I think it's if you can create an atmosphere where you're allowed to fail and perhaps fail together or fail alone, and you still, it's not a problem. It means that you're learning and you're doing something. I think quite easily it's easy to be easier to be a good newcomer or have a startup or whatever. But then when you come to a certain level, you easily become afraid of taking any risks, because then you already had something, and then there is a possibility that you will lose it, and you also have kind of expectations that mean that you perhaps you have something to lose and you're a bit afraid. And I think there you have to work quite a lot on having an atmosphere where it's completely good to fail, and having, I often say to my students that as long as you fall, then you learn something new. But if it's like skiing or something, when you don't fall anymore, then you've perhaps reached a good level. But if you want to go further, then you have to do something, take some risks. So that's. It's not easy to fail, but you should be able to enjoy it and to let others fail as well, and not start to blame them for that.
I think there's some sort of wonderful things being brought up, that the courage and trust and not being too sensitive and to have possibility to fail and so forth. To add one concrete thing for successful teamwork, I think, is to have a goal, or at least to discuss together what is the goal, where we are heading towards, and that's sort of to never forget. And in an orchestra, which is a team of 100 and something people, it's a bit of a challenge. So we need to have sort of really clear goal, which is next week's concert, and having the sort of the sheet music in front of you, so that helps in achieving the goal. When it's a smaller team, then you can be more free in sort of developing the goals which you want to develop.
I would agree with everyone before me. Something I would bring out is also that actually we, being a very small team here, we work on very practical basis and like solving very practical problems. And I sometimes feel that all this needs to be there. There needs to be this atmosphere and a feel of security and all this with doing even those practical things. But then also I'm wondering, and we've been talking about it a lot lately, that actually how we also have to remember to bind what we do here every day with something bigger, with something that is a phenomena we want to support in the idea of a phenomena. Like for you, for instance, it's very obvious probably what you want to support and so on. And of course, in the culture and in arts, it's always there, it's taken a bit like an sich, but then also to find the own angle to this bigger picture, even though you're doing very day-to-day practical things.
Maybe one thing to brought out here, the reality where I am working is that there may be 2 designers in the team. Then there is a bunch of engineers, coders, business people. There might be a couple of customers. There might be really high-ranking business heads in the same room, and that kind of lifts the bar. It's quite actually easy to be among same-minded, but the world is not like that anymore. And another thing is that you don't know how they culturally behave because they are all around the world. So what you are saying is maybe misinterpreted, it's understood wrong, or what they are saying to you, you are kind of taking it wrong. So that's a kind of a fussy, very fussy situation where you need to do it, and somehow you still should be able to pull out something super creative that nobody has done before. I think that's the kind of situation.
Yeah, I can tell, connecting to that, a practical example in cultures where you're not supposed to answer no to any question. Then you have to learn to ask the questions in a way that you can come out with, or you can say that you can never answer that no, I'm not allowed, I can't do that. And that in Senegal, when we were working with the project, we had a difficult detail, and they said of course that they understood it, and then it was built wrongly, and then we came there, and then we kind of understood that we had asked, do you understand? And then in that culture you always say that yes, of course. But then you have to go through the question in another way, like, oh, so if this would be that space and that would be, then would it be? And then you can turn it around. But that's, I think, to lose your face in different cultures is very different, and it's good to somehow, of course, you can never really understand other people, whoever it is, because you only really understand yourself, if even that. But when it's even longer, further away, it's more difficult.
Indeed. What about Aleksi? You have also different cultures in orchestra. How does this trust and the atmosphere?
Yes, I mean, we've got now like 10% of the orchestra is coming from abroad. But at the same time, sort of the classical music world and the symphonic heritage that we are sort of continuing is a rather strong sort of kind of platform that you fit into. So the way of working in orchestras all over the world is, in its main essence, more or less the same. So I think those kind of questions of different cultures, it comes not in the sort of the actual work of a musician, but in the sort of the encounters in between the work. But it's arts and artists have since ages been sort of the most international and moving people ever. So I think we've got some tradition to carry on.
Yes, it's so natural. And you said very well that you have a ready platform how to cooperate together.
Maybe I can. Is this on? Yes, I guess. It doesn't feel like it's on. Okay. Okay. Yes, now it's on. Like the startup field is also built like born global. So that's definitely another world where it's almost like a must. Because just comparing that, you would only have like a very homogeneous team, all from the same country and same background. It's like almost impossible to actually get like anything totally new built on that kind of composition. Yeah. So I think it's a fundamental richness factor.
Yes, indeed. What other ingredients would be in a very, very good, successful teamwork? I'm a coach. I'm asking that what else question.
I don't know if you're looking for a right answer to this.
No.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about something that's in the collaboration or in the teamwork between us who kind of like manage and the artist who is actually like doing their thing. What I've learned, and it's very related to trust actually, is something that these creative minds that we work together with actually sometimes their ideas are even hard to believe in, like designers probably as well, and architects and so on. And in a way, it's also that there's the people that we work together with, they've been through so many things already, and they've been like, there's so few, I mean, they're super professionals, but still, like this trust on, okay, this is a very crazy idea, no one's done this before, we are an organization who is big, this and this big, and so on, to really like learn to trust in those ideas. In the beginning, I found it a bit difficult, but I've now learned like 110%. I do trust they would always deliver, and still you need to allow this, like someone can happen and it may not be what it was meant to be and so on. But the idea, the core idea is still there and very something that very needs to be respected and trusted on.
Hey, now one very difficult question for you all. How do you create trust?
I was just thinking about, you know, I mean, I've been working for corporations for a long time, so you've been thinking about this combination between hard and soft lately quite a bit, because if it's meaning that, a little bit like parenting, I've got 3 kids, so I'm still learning, but you know, if you're soft all the time, it's not very good. If you're hard all the time, not so good. But it's this combination of knowing when to nurture and empathy and listen and coach and all that kind of stuff, and then when you just needed to make a decision, when it actually needs to be quite hard, actually. And some personalities are easier to go one way or the other. Been trying to actually do both at the same time. It's not easy, because when you go a little bit too hard, you break that trust. Super hard to get it back. At the same time, if you're too soft, you don't have that sort of ability to really push things forward. You have a little bit chaos to a certain extent. So I think the hard and soft dynamic, especially in the corporate world, is super difficult to maintain. But I think that's something, as a parent, it's the same sort of scenario, kind of the hard and soft. Yeah.
I also have something that is very much related to kind of like the metaphor of parenting. I actually think is very valid on this one too. It's about the interference. You know, that because like trust is not equal to, okay, do whatever and I won't even like come and hear about it, or I won't question it before you come up with a ready thing. That's not equal to trust. You know, it's a very, very thin balance about that. Like, if you go like too near and all the time trying to be like, oh, but how about this and how about this and why don't you do this and why don't you do this, and you know, kind of like go and put your fingers too deep on it, or too much kind of like go into that, solve this and solve that and solve that. You know, that's not very good. But at the same time, if you're really like leaving like everything too open and just saying that. Like I have so much trust on you that you know you will just come up with something amazing. I'll just leave the whole open floor to you. That won't lead anywhere either. So kind of like, you know, where is the balance? How to support and spar, but not too much interfere.
It's also a cultural thing as well. I had a long discussion with a colleague about the differences of, I mean, you know, there's a team leader, but then there's also, I mean, my job title is creative director. It has a lot of weight behind it. There's, you know, in a fashion sense, if you think of a typical creative director, it's a certain diva, of which I am sometimes, and most of the time not. But if you look at how Italian fashion companies work with creative directors, they are the answer to everything. They may not have the answer really, but they need to have the answer because it's an apprenticeship sort of way of working. Whereas in Scandinavia, it's a lot more open. So the role of a creative director is a lot more of an enabler, a facilitator. And if you try to play the diva role, it's not going to work out very well. But it's needed sometimes, because at the same time, you also have this sort of neutrality that happens in creativity, where data takes over, or research or facts, and you lose the artistic sensibility. So you need to kind of bring that in there. But this difference between how Scandinavia looks at that role and how Southern Europe looks at it is radically different.
Yeah, and I think when, as a leader, you have to, when it's all a bit fussy, then you have to take your role quite actively, and that's a way of trusting the people that you're working with. It can be with your children or with other groups, but then you have to take your responsibility that no, we're doing it like this, even like having it all open, but then also take the responsibility and not leave it to your children to sort it out.
I think the thing with trust is that it's always a two-way road. It's the reciprocity of it. But someone needs to start, so sort of giving trust and giving an example of your own is one way of doing it. But the problem is that building a trust takes such a long time, and you can really mess that up really, really quickly and easily. One thing talking about trust and confidence is to also talk about the self-confidence of the leader and of everyone in the team, and how to sort of foster and develop that. Because with self-confidence, I don't really mean this ego kind of thing. On the contrary, if one and when one is comfortable and knows where he is or she is, you know, that sort of shows the way. We had this wonderful viola player yesterday, Tapia Zimmerman, she's absolutely amazing, like one of the best viola players in the world, and she's so comfortable in whatever situation she is, be it teaching, you know, on the hall performing. And there's no question whether, you know, you should or not trust her, because it's somehow she has this brave feeling at, you know, come along, let's try this out, and then you follow.
Yeah, I think that might be something to do with the consistent behavior, which I think that the leader should have, in a way that you are what you are, you have your personality and you have your way of working. So you need to keep that up. In a way, your team members, people around you, they know that you will explode or you won't explode or you do this like this every time. So they know that that's that guy, that's how it goes, and they have learned to kind of live with it. And I think that then it starts to create this kind of stability, which then creates trust, even though the stability might be unstable.
I'm thinking about a word, creating, actually, when I was earlier talking about this 110% trust and coming up with amazing ideas. It's also about, I guess, even though it's like with an artist or within a corporation, it's also about creating ideas. It's about like working together for those ideas and how to performance them the best possible way without interfering too much into the content, at least in terms of when we talk about art. But also, then another thing, what I'm thinking now, I have my background in bigger media corporations where I can feel some of the pain and joy you may, Jeremiah, feel it at Fiskars, for instance, to deliver those ideas and also to build the trust not only with your team but also like to the other parts of the organization, to the commercial side and so on. So you're actually kind of like measured also like by your team how you actually can deliver their ideas, and on the other hand from the other parts of the organization, can they trust you when you deliver those ideas? And I think that's very important in terms of creating trust, actually, to create the ideas and then be trustworthy in terms of delivering them onwards.
Maybe this kind of that everyone has their own role. There's a community, so you are belonging to something, and you have your kind of clear role in it. It will create a kind of trust that this is how the things are.
Perfect ideas, very nice. And the metaphor of being a parent is fabulous, because there is a similar kind of thing, so that you have to be you are responsible of what we are doing, but not to micromanage the thing. And while the children, they grow, the responsibility grows too. So that, and you are predictable all the time. That's very well said. If we then think about leadership. What kind of leaders you are? How do you lead your nearest team?
When I started the job about 4 years ago, I had a meeting with Human Resources, and they sat me down and said, do you understand that we haven't had a creative director since Kai Frank? And I was like, okay. And it's not true, they've had it, but it's been design director and some guy working in corporate, blah, blah, blah. But basically, in this setup, they haven't had it like that since Kai Frank. And I was like, okay. And then, the discussion was like, okay, but maybe you should do something new, something different. Because obviously, hiring somebody from a different country in that role, they do it on purpose to be able to open something up. So I did a bit of work on understanding actually how Kai Frank was working back then, and I found it was completely different than what I thought. I thought he was just kind of working on the objects and stuff like that, but he was working on hiring different designers like Oivo Toika, and he hired Oivo Toika on purpose because Oivo was so different than him, which I think is super interesting. And he was also working with sales. When he designed the Kilta series, he insisted that it be sold, even though salespeople didn't believe in it because it was so simple and the whole world was very decorative, so they said, we're not going to make any money. And even in Stockman's didn't take it as a range. The story I heard, Stockman's never took it because they didn't believe in it. And then he told employees to go to Stockman's and ask, do you have that new Kilta series? Because we really like it. And that was kind of Kai Frank doing his thing, going to the factory, working with it's super nice. So I like that, because you always hear about the designer as being the artisan and making the beautiful mug, but he was working really between things, and he didn't even want the credit of designer, but they said, you're so good, you need the credit. So I think that kind of example is quite interesting, quite contemporary, actually, even though that was such a long time ago. So I get inspired by that sort of reference. Yeah.
I think my job as a leader is to, first of all, remind all the time why we are doing this, like where are we going and what is the big picture, like just putting it like between every sentence and somewhere, just like hide it in every little detail. And then also to remind how awesome these people are, how great they are, and how great is the work. So for example, because we are doing the food, so I have told everybody that I'm the volunteer to taste whatever you want me to taste. If it's not poisonous, I will always taste it. Because that's kind of like the feeling that you can just give me whatever. It really doesn't matter. You don't have to kind of like think about that, like, oh, but it really needs to be so polished. So I've said that whatever it is, I will always be the volunteer to taste it. And that's actually great, because they actually give me like whatever so surprising stuff, because they feel that the threshold is really, really so low. And then I also feel that kind of like whenever they are on the crossroads, like where should I go, and I don't feel that I know what should I do in this corner, I will always help them, that like just to be on there exactly on that moment. I've said that if nothing else, just the WhatsApp is a really easy tool that, wherever I am, somewhere at the airport or something, I will always like help you if you're at the crossroads. And of course, then the fourth point is to kind of like be kind of like an extra brain, whenever there is like a bit extra boost of creativity or ideas needed. That there is something that like, I'm somehow stuck, like just give me something, and kind of like, just to go through to the current thing what they're doing, and like, how about this thing? Because I'm very good at this really quick ideas. Like, they might not be like the final great things, but like I always have something kind of like to throw to the thing what they're doing. And I'm not talking about just the food products, it's also of course like other stuff around this, so whether it's about the brand and packaging and whatever, and kind of like concepts that we're doing. So yeah, like it's everything from from food to the more conceptual and visual things.
Well, I guess I'm a bit different from that. I'm not that much anymore in the hands-on design work, so I think that that's other people's thing to do. My thing is to set the goal, set the direction, give the vision. This is where we are going, and you are taking us there. That's their job. They know how to do. I empower them to do the design, take a really big role in decision making, what comes to the design, what comes to the kind of actual content. Of course, I talk to them with it about it, that is it going towards our direction or is it maybe a side way, and kind of give the guidelines like that. But that's my way. I want all the 50 people think that it's their personal responsibility, task and job to take us there, and we just commonly understand that that's where we are going, and I think that works, at least in my environment, quite nicely.
Yeah, I think it's the role of the leader to analyze the situation a bit. And what I've been doing with a smaller team in the academic world is that we meet in quite relaxed atmosphere, the certain every half a year or something like that. When we go through, we go out eating or doing something nice, and then everybody has the word to say what he or she did during the last year, half a year, what was nice and what could perhaps be improved in some way, and what could be the goals for or the idea how he or she could develop the next half a year. And I think it's a good way also to go through what has happened together, because when you're in a team, everybody goes in and do quite different things, and then to know what in that person's opinion was one of the key things during the last months, and doing it not like having the CV thing or anything like that, but really thinking of how to deal with that, and also share then also difficult things, so that you can, in the pedagogical atmosphere, there's quite a lot of things you have to take into consideration, and then it's always good to get help from the others, and also there I think I can say analyze the situation, how I would like the team to go further.
Just to be very practical on how, as I started in January, and I felt like there was sort of many questions, but two things. The other one was how to develop sort of, a symphony concert takes place every week, but how to sort of maintain those waves that continue from that single moment that is so big, and how to sort of do things before and after, and somehow foster that. And another one was that working in a symphony orchestra is extremely, it's very disciplinary. You have the role that you do, and you follow the conductor, and I did want to sort of embrace the creativity that I know there are in each and single artist and musicians that we have. So we sort of collected a number of volunteers from the team, from the orchestra, to really talk about our side program and what it could be, what is already being done, what are they missing, and we talked about why are we doing this thing, and had 3 rather sort of firm sessions, and came up with a huge amount of ideas. And one of them was to have a monthly club after a concert of the first Friday, which was nice. So just before the summer, I just sent an invitation to all the orchestra members to come up with, if there was a club, what would you like to do? What would be an inspiring thing that you would like to present? And there was a wave of wonderful things, sort of just the challenge of selecting the ones that we can make now this season. And that was nice. But then, just 4 weeks before the club, it seemed like, it's ready-made, it's polished, and I still did want to stir it a little bit. So there was a number of contemporary circus artists that I knew, and I presented them to the musicians, sort of asking whether they would like to sort of see if that fits with the program they had. And the club was last Friday, the first one, and it came out, I think spectacular. It wasn't me who did it; it was their ideas, and it felt like a meaningful way of going a little step onward.
I think there are better people to answer this question on behalf of me in this room, my colleagues, of course. But as a leader, I kind of like try to see myself as a person whose work is actually to create the circumstances for working, of course, and then on the other hand, working as a colleague together with the team and with the artists, even though our work might differ quite a lot from each other. And then I was thinking about something that we were talking yesterday actually with one of our artists, that what I think is very important in terms of leading a team is also trying to be the one thinking proactively and trying in that way also solve the problems, like to be a bit ahead in terms of thinking where we're going, and then once we face some problems to be there, as you said, even though not present physically, but anyway being there always to help out if needed. And then in this organization we work, I think very important is also this help for managing emotions actually, because they are very much here when we work and in the collaboration with the artists. And I've learned a very precious lesson actually from Ottawa, my former employee. They used to say, or they do say, I bet still that tunne on tosi, that the feeling is real. And I try to keep that very much in my mind when I'm working with colleagues or with the artist, and like work on that all the time when facing problems.
Yes, very important things. Next would be the interesting part. I asked you, everybody, to figure out one question which you would like to ask from your colleague. So, what would be your question?
Actually, the question to Timo. Okay. Building on what you just said about setting the vision or setting the tone. What do you use to be able to do that? And what do you do if you would, let's say you leave Kone next week. How do you maintain that vision somehow lives in the company when you're gone and somebody comes to replace you, or there's no replacement? What sort of things do you use to create vision?
Vision is not, of course, something that I would do alone. I would do it with my closest reportees together, because I kind of trust in the kind of that when you think issues from several viewpoints, you get a better solution. So it's mainly my responsibility then to set that, yes, this is it, and agree. If there is an agreement or not agreement, I need to set that this is the thing. We draw it out, we make the future, we make the kind of picture that this is where we are going. And I share it with everybody in the team. And in order to be able to kind of walk towards that direction, we also make guidelines in a way that not maybe the guidelines as you have in a very kind of a different field of a industry, but this kind of guidelines that how do you design, like you put the human first, you take a big picture, you look at the future, and you look further, not just the next year, and you experiment with your customer, that sort of thing. So this kind of rules to make, and I think that it is then growing into people, not only designers but everybody in R&D and who are in touch with us, and it starts to be design starts to be owned by everybody. So it's not a designer's thing; it's everybody's thing in the company. So that's the way I hope it sticks.
Can I ask Jenny? How is your role as a leader differing when you're at the university and when you're at the company? And how do you see your own personality and your own leadership changing when you're actually working with students versus you're working with colleagues or even customers?
Yeah, I think it's very difficult to have very many different roles. I have 4 different cards depending on who I want to be that day. But I see it as it's like, actually for me it's not a problem, but I see that very many others would like to put me in a box, and for me I think all of these different roles are nurturing each other. But we're only 3, and in my own company I don't have employees, so I'm doing everything myself. So it's there. I'm not really a leader, and when we're 3, we are all equal, But then I could see, or usually I don't have employees. They come for shorter times. But perhaps leading working when there's a house built or something, there's very many experts involved and a building team and all of that. So there I think my role is quite clear to solve problems and really be the leader. But and of course in that sense, if there's a carpenter that is really talented, I want him or her to be able to solve, a bit like, of course they are similar, but when you're working with students, then it's in many ways different. Also the fact that I work with students that are quite young, so they are quite unclear about what they are looking for. So it's a different leadership, and the pedagogical questions are very different from a building site.
Building people.
Yeah, it's building trust. I think in both it's building trust that everybody has a unique knowledge that they can make better in their own way, and students have them, and carpenters or whoever who's working in the building site, they have a knowledge that I don't have, and the students have knowledge that I don't have, that they should go and build further, and they know things that I don't, and they should grow in that. So in that way you can compare it, but it's quite different anyway. But it's nice to combine. I think I couldn't be an architect without being a teacher, and I couldn't be a teacher without being an architect.
I have a question for Jeremiah. We've been talking about trust, and I think somehow the other side of the coin, or a different viewpoint to the trust, is the question of responsibility. And this might be a very Lutheran idea perhaps, but somehow we've got this built-in idea of responsibility. And I was wondering if you see that this is something that comes from within, or if this sense of responsibility is something that can be developed or worked on in a work environment and in society. An easy one. That's why I asked it from you.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, the company, Fiskars, has these values, responsibilities in there. It might be called integrity or accountability, but basically it's the same sort of thing, what you're talking about. And a lot of the discussions I've been having now with the team members is kind of how do they take responsibility in what they do. There's been a lot of different cases. Somebody gets sick for a very long period of time, that employee fills in. Or we make a mistake somewhere, that employee or that team kind of corrects it rather quickly. So I think the responsibility is something actually we've been talking about quite a bit in the last six months, because we're looking for sort of ways of living up to values, and also talking about not only what we're working on, but also how we're working on, because everything's normally measured on results. Like, did you get that shop built, or did you make that product range amazing? But then how did you do it? So did you make a lot of people angry, but results are good, but you made a bad culture? So the responsibility is actually super important right now in the discussions that I'm having with the team and how the team relates to other teams.
I have a question to the gallery. I don't know if then it's you who's answering. I feel it's sometimes with the students, and also colleagues and many people, to leave enough space, but at the same time help. And sometimes you have students that don't want to become independent, that they are getting so perhaps valuable help that they want to have more and more and more and more, and then at some point you have to say that no, it's not. Now I can't help you anymore. That it's or at least we're also being mentoring some that have, and there's also a very fine balance when it's really working and when it goes over your personal atmosphere or your place. And it's not happening often, but it's, I think there's a balance there. And also, if I get help from someone and I feel that you become a bit dependent on it if it's very good, that you really, before that person has seen it, I can't continue. And that's not a very creative situation.
That's very interesting, like working together with authors and editors, having very strong connection and bond, and then curators and artists also. But I think in visual arts, it's still, in a way, it's still different. The visual artists are, or like, if you like, free artists are so used to working on their own and then like talking with colleagues and so on and peers a lot. And it's also about the kind of the guidelines of the gallery, that how much you actually interfere and how much not, and what we do and what we believe in is something that we would not interfere with the content basically at all, but then we would always support the curatorial discussions and someone to talk about it and so on, but we try not to interfere with the content and give the space here to be explored as freely as possible. I think that's very important for what we do as a principle. But then on the other hand, like talking about this, like someone giving a lot of help and then it's hard to kind of give up on that help. I find it more in this managing and practical things, that artists very often work on their own, and they actually, of course, we want to free their time for creating and trying to help them as much as possible with managing. And then on the other hand, we're not their assistants either. So we need to like draw the line also in terms of the practical work. And that's sometimes very hard. You find yourself like you really want to help, and then you find yourself like writing some texts and editing and so on, which sometimes it's very important that we do it, but not always.
I have questions for Maija, since we in a big corporations are looking very keenly on entrepreneurs, thinking that though they are so fast and they are so agile, want to have a piece of that in the corporations. So what is it that makes you successful as an entrepreneur? That's a really big question for us.
Yeah, I think the secret is in the decision making. So this agileness is really into the how do we make decisions, and you know, when you're a small company, you have the vision, and then you just back it up with like evidence that is enough, but you know, the evidence wouldn't have any meaning if you don't know exactly that this is where I believe in, and like that there is my lighthouse. So when you know that we have to go there anyways, and then now it's only about the execution, so the decision making is super efficient, that basically you have this doctor's logic that you study it quickly, you diagnose, and then you act. But you really need to act. You cannot just go back and forth, and maybe we do, or maybe we don't, and you have to still go ask there, and approval here. You know, because that is really the thing that is making it most difficult. But yeah, to have the vision and make the decision quickly, and then go and try and learn each time. So I think that's the combination. Actually, I do believe that it would be possible to have something of that in the big corporations. Maybe not on the very basic thing, you know, where you just do exactly like it has been going for years and years. But when it goes for experimenting something, it really goes back to all of these things for allowing you to fail, you know, trying and testing and adjusting really quickly. That's so much more important. My 2 cents.
Thank you. It's funny because it's almost like startups, corporations want to adjust to startups, but I also know the startups are trying to stabilize. They would love to have the consistency and sort of stability of a big brand, of a big company. It's interesting how they kind of like commonly inform one another.
That's exactly the point, and actually I really think that this is one of the biggest questions of our time, that how do you make the big ones and the small ones to really efficiently work together? You know, because if you're only trying to kind of like just to leave the startup to do their own little hustle and don't kind of like go in the middle, it really doesn't help at all. You know, then it remains like the startup. But then at the same time, if you kind of like say like, oh, you know, let's put the startup into our mill and like expect that it would come better if it like takes all of our processes and like, you know, gets the kind of like the real thing and the stable thing going on. It's not on either end, you know, it's somewhere, and it's actually really difficult to get that solved. But I think it would be worth exploring.
And could it be that the big companies have already reached the lighthouse, and then they don't really know where's the next one?
Yeah, maybe.
I was first about to ask this from Jenny, actually, because I have a pleasure of having a lot of architects in my life. But actually, I'm going to ask it from all of you who have a kind of like creative education background. That how do you find this role of being a leader or being the boss? If I've understood right, you don't have that much, like for instance, in architects' education, and I always find it very interesting looking into these architect bureaus where they grow and try to figure out how to actually manage it.
Depends on the situation. I would say you fulfill the role that's needed in that moment, whoever you're working with or whoever you're working for. In my case, there's a role of creative director. I have to take that role. So sometimes I guess, sometimes I hope for the best, sometimes I consult, but you know, sometimes you need to have you have to be that role. And you also have to do it in your own way and believe that you've been chosen to do the job and keep on going. So I think you just have to act the role, but then also be authentic to yourself. So then that, like I was saying previously, that the creative director, you could have a totally different person do the job I'm doing now, and it can be a completely different result, different behavior, and it might be fine. So you just, you know, you try to do the best you can and try to develop according to what you see the people and the company needing. And then you can only fake it so much, right? So then eventually your authentic personality comes out and you just shape that role. But it takes time. I mean, now I realize after 4 years, it's quite stable, but in the beginning you're really unstable because it's like it could be this, it could be that, it could be many things. But so I really believe these days in things taking time, as much as I also believe in things moving fast.
Yeah, and I guess we're all learning anyway. Like, doesn't matter what background you have. But what about then another question? What about then like giving up your own creative work that is in many times the fact when you actually need to take the role of a leader? Jenny, for instance.
I can answer that one because I actually had a student who made his diploma work on just this theme to be a leader of an architecture office because it's so blurry and most architects still prefer designing than to be leaders and it's difficult. Of course you're always a big group when you're an architect, even though if you would work alone there's lots of people that you have to come to this common solution and something will be built and everybody, it should work as a whole, so there's many people involved. But I think we have a long tradition of just the fact that they somehow work and it doesn't work anymore, and we now start to have quite big offices and it's not like in Alvarato's time there's that it's still the master who's kind of signing everything. So I think I don't have an answer to that, but I think there's always a balance. I think it's always a balance between, also in the academic world, you have to know when you're a leader, you're not the specialist anymore in the same way. You have specialists with you, but you should take other decisions. And perhaps the problem is sometimes that you really like the grassroots work and to understand that, but not doing it yourself and doing it a bit, but not enough. That's a balance that I think is quite difficult for everybody who really loves the creative work.
No, it's true. I was asked some months ago by a Swedish designer advice on how does this colleague that he has, how can she become a creative director? And I thought that's so interesting and maybe very symbolic of what's going on in Sweden right now, where you've got these very young students that are studying to become creative directors, which blew my mind because so they have this almost like this educational program where you become a creative director. I mean, so, and whether that's for an architecture studio or whatever, and so I believe that you need to know what you're doing and go into that role eventually. Maybe that's a bit traditional, but I still kind of believe in that. Otherwise, you've got a 25-year-old saying they're a creative director. I mean, I'm sorry, maybe I'm a little bit getting a bit old, but I don't see it quite that way. And they don't teach it, and I think that they shouldn't. Well, maybe, I mean, they could think about a design manager or somebody who's maybe not hands-on, because there is a lot of need for more design managers, not necessarily, let's say, industrial designers, because there's not so much stuff that needs to be made. But it's a very good question, and especially from this question from Sweden got me thinking about this, about, where do you really want to get educated?
Out of curiosity, Alexi, I have been thinking about this a lot. How do people who need to perform in front of the audience again and again and again, how do you kind of put yourself into a drive in a way that you are giving the best of yourself, the best of your team every time?
Yeah.
7 o'clock Thursday evening.
But it is a very good question, and one of the essential ones, and a question we talk about quite often within the orchestra. And of course, there needs to be this drive and this passion and love for the content. You talked about that. Being a design director, you need to come from somewhere within. And then I think it's in a performing arts. It's a question of professionalism. It's a part of the your profession to put 150% every Thursday evening at 7 o'clock. I mean, that's if you are a professional, you need to do that, because you can see it so obviously if that doesn't happen.
Hey, thank you. Brilliant questions and very good answers. Now I would invite the audience to ask or comment. Please, Annie.
Yeah, I have a question for all of you. I haven't heard the word theme here today, and I was wondering what kind of things come to your mind when we talk about creative leadership and things.
Did you?
We sort of shortly discussed failure, just sort of giving permission to not succeed as a sort of, in a way, to build trust. But perhaps something sort of more developed could be said.
Well, I was thinking about this creative leadership because I guess that's that's the theme of this talk, that there's no school, as much as maybe in Sweden they want to make a program about it, but there's no school to be a creative leader. So I think it is trial and error. You make a ton of mistakes. So by nature, to fall into that role, you gotta have the experience, and as a result, you're gonna make a lot of mistakes. And maybe watch other creative leaders and see what they do right or wrong and try to find your own way. So it is a good point about this failure. We haven't talked about it, but I think it's through trial and error.
Yeah, I think I took up the word that you have to try to make an atmosphere where it's okay to fail, and it's okay that you fail together or you fail alone, and all of that is, and it's very much used, but I really like this quote by Samuel Beckett, this ever tried, ever failed, try again, fail again, fail better.
I actually have as one of my mottos is what was it? The only way to fail is to refuse from help. Because actually, I mean, if you do something and you really do your best, and kind of like whenever you have challenges and you have like something that doesn't go exactly like you planned, you just go on and seek for help and seek for answers, because there's always somebody who can answer. There's always somebody who can actually like give their expertise in whatever is the detail. And if you still kind of like don't succeed, it's actually not failing, you know, because it's just experience, and then it was not supposed to go. This path didn't take us anywhere, you know, but it's not failing. The failing is that, you know, you're kind of like just closing your eyes and just, you know, like falling off the road. So that's what I think actually is the failure. So the failure is not the failure.
Yes. And also I think that failure can be for a leader a tool to create the trust.
Yeah, I was just about to come there, that my experience is that we felt really like that we kind of like failed. I don't know if we're denying the word when we try to talk about not succeeding or something, but now thinking back, and already then I'm thinking of something very specific thing that happened. I think we found each other in a way that we never found before, and as a group we were just way more like way stronger afterwards.
Thank you. Good question. Please.
Laura Hilbert from the Finnish Institute in Berlin. I was a bit provoked by it that you said there's no training to become a creative director, or a bit provoked by saying, you know, there's no training to become a leader, because in a way I look around and I'm glad, for example, that universities in Finland have started to understand that if you are the director of a huge university, you better go and get a training to be a leader, and they have programs that everybody who is a dean now, for example, is going to get trained as a leader. So I'm wondering in how much you believe in, you know, these change management courses or anything, and how much you think there's anything into it. And the actual question I wanted to ask is, we talk about creativity and leadership. My question would be, because I think as a leader you really need to have visions, but these visions need to be very new, and you need creativity yourself to have new visions. So what is your recipe? Where do you go to? What do you do to foster your own creative thoughts?
Well, maybe I start. I personally I go to the sites where people are, where our products are, where we are doing business. Observe, shadow, do what they do, ask questions, and it just quite easily actually comes the direction from there, that you see what the world is about, how it is changing. And to your previous question, I think that this kind of, I agree with you both. I don't think that directly from the school you can become as a great leader, but just learning in your job you can't either. You need them both. You need to be trained to lead, so that you don't make a mistake, you don't start to micromanage your people and that sort of things. But you also need to have the experience of what the job is all about in order to know what it takes from your people. So I think that it's a good combination. Greatest leaders have them both.
No, it's true. There's some great programs out there, professional programs for leadership. I've taken a few of them. They're good. You also need to find your own way through them, because they can be a bit generic. So it's probably a combination of books, leadership courses, and then, I mean, this year we have personal development plans, so I made my own, and it's made up of some online courses, but also dinners. I requested a budget to have dinners with people in the city who I think can help me with certain things. And yeah, it's about 3 dinners every 6 months or so. And I choose who to have dinner with, and I pay. Anyone, any guys want to? No, but this helps, actually. The dinners have been amazing. And of course, the online, I just enrolled in a course recently that could be good. But these dinners are amazing, because then you can really sit down with somebody and talk openly about things. And someone told me once that, you know, living in Helsinki, it's not like living in London or New York, where you feel that you're exposed to things all the time. At the same time, you can live here and get a good understanding of what's good. Not by just being here and going, oh, you know, there's a lot of good things happening in Helsinki Design Week, but kind of like through the information that you, through the people that you surround yourself with, through the information that you take in, through certain trips every once in a while. You know, it's not that you need to just travel to London or New York to see all the goodness. You can do it here. It's totally fine. So I think it's really personal development. It's, you know, it's on your own.
Yeah, I think like training is always good, and it can be sometimes a bit generic, I admit, but what it does to me at least is that I start to be conscious about what I'm doing, and I can analyze it and I can give it words. Because when you have less experience, then you're perhaps even more enthusiastic than those that have more. But what you don't have is that you can analyze what you are doing and why in the moment. But that's when you have more time behind and perhaps more training, then you can analyze what's happening. And I think that even those generic trainings are giving you tools to somehow think that, oh, I'm standing there now, I'm having that I should kind of go into, and so on. So that's what they do, at least to me, and I suppose to many others, and therefore they are valuable in any way.
So how to have those creative ideas? I think for me and for everyone, it's a balance of 2 things. It's encounters and solitude. That's as simple as that. Be it dinners or traveling, you know, meeting people. And then for me, the solitude is basically I do long distance running barefoot, and there's absolutely no problem of which I wouldn't know at least the direction to go onwards with after 2 or 2.5 hours of running and letting the unconscious work on its own.
Yeah, this unconscious mind, that's actually a really, really great tool, you know, because this is also something what I think I have only learned to really, really use only in the last few years, that, you know, if you have a problem, it's actually, there is no point in just trying to force it, like squeeze it, like, oh, you have to solve this, you have to solve it. Just like tell your mind that, okay, this is what I need to solve. Like even just write on a paper. That's like amazing how well it actually works. That you just write it down and say like, I have to solve this, and then just come back a few days later and you're like, oh, here is the solution, you know? That like really, especially for the creative ideas, that's how it works.
And that's a question of trust as well. You need to trust that.
Yeah, you need to trust. I mean, you can even leave it. You don't really have to like, yeah, why bother just like trying to squeeze it and sweat it or something, because you can just let your subconscious mind actually working on it.
And that kind of trust for yourself normally develops while you are more experienced, so that you can trust that you know it and the idea comes also.
Yeah, I think that those moments when, for me it's walking, it's often that I start, when I have a problem, I start with it, I try to start with it immediately in some way, so that I just kind of, or a task in any way, and then I start, and then sometimes it's half a week and it has been solved because I kind of had it there, and the subconscious is just working quite nicely during the night, or I don't know when, and there is just the fact that I have touched that task early enough. And walking is for me because then you can't have a phone, or if you walk quite quickly and not having any try to, even when I could take the bus or the metro or whatever, then I try to walk so that all of this goes kind of through and then gets a pace, and then it
For me, this new visions and getting new ideas, I think we have the pleasure of having so many ideas all the time that we don't have the time to do it, but like thinking about like vision, not an idea. I'm actually quite surprised that now when we have these 11 different worlds in this space every year, many of them actually look into questions that are very big and that have effect in all of our businesses. And that is something I've just quite recently found, that actually we have a lot to learn from the way artists work, for instance, what's their working identity and all this in terms of the future of the work and the future of a middleman as a gallery is, and so on. That is something I'm really excited about at the moment. And then another thing, as you said, is that the encounters, and especially looking into different industries, like art is very in the margin in many ways, even though in terms of content and the questions of the content, it's very affecting all of us. But for me, it's very interesting to look into how the other middlemen, for instance, work and what kind of digital solutions they've found and all this. That's what I like to do when I need to think about the next 10 years or something.
Yes. Hey, thank you. I think that you have many questions still, but we can continue after the forum. I would like to thank so much our speakers. You are amazing. And also the gallery. Thank you for having us. And thank you all for your interest and being here. The next Creative Leaders Forum will be in autumn. Here will be 2 of them. So please stay tuned to our Facebook page and like and follow, so that you will be first in line to get the information when and where we will be. Thank you so much.